Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The hour, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting edition, as you tell us, of the Dr. Sky Experience, proudly here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. As we continue to open our minds about the great mysteries of the universe, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, some of the things that go on here on planet Earth that may have a connection, we believe so, from what goes up there and comes down here to the Earth. The topics are usually from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. But first, a most hearty Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to the entire family of WABC 77 Talk Radio as we continue, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about these great subjects. Wishing you and yours the best of health and happiness all throughout the remainder of the year, and naturally with great emphasis and energy in 2026. Of the four types of conversation we talk about, debate, discourse, diatribe, and dialogue, we love dialogue. And we love that in the form of critical thinking. And just along those lines, if you have questions or comments, and I'm sure you do, we welcome you to be part of this family, an ever-growing family here on this radio station with all the other great hosts that are here 24/7. The contact number, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And while we're at it, why not listen to previous iterations of not only the Dr. Sky Experience, but what about all the other great hosts that we just talked about and mentioned, of course, not by name, but by the energy that they deliver. Simply go to WABCRadio.com or RedAppleAudioNetworks.com for more information. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our helmsman, as we like to think of this Theater of the Mind spacecraft, Theater of the Mind, ladies and gentlemen, as they, Tony and Bill, navigate as helmsmen the great power of this particular radio station. We want to thank Patrick Wood, our previous guest here on the Dr. Sky Experience, educating us as you tell us you like him, and we also do too, on AI, technocracy, and transhumanism. But the subject matter for the next 2 hours is quite interesting in my opinion, and hope you would agree. What about the power grid? What about issues about electric rates going up all over the nation? We say the electric grid is strained, but what's the source of all this? What about electromagnetic pulse, and how could that affect the Earth? How could that affect you, ladies and gentlemen? And not to be in a negative downward spiral, we bring solutions to this particular subject. Late breaking news as we speak about the world of astronomy. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, there is a massive sunspot in size right in the center of the sun. It's the diameter of the distance of the Earth to the Moon, some 230,000 miles, making up about a third, if not a quarter, of the diameter of the sun. What else is happening? As of 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, on December the 6th, a very powerful solar flare, smack dab in the center of the sun, is headed toward the Earth. Not to be alarmist, but spacecraft and weather observers at NOAA and the SOHO spacecraft have detected a full halo storm heading directly for the Earth. And that should strike the upper atmosphere of the Earth on December the 9th. Not necessarily to be alarmed, it could be a moderate display of the northern lights, but what about communication breakdowns and things of that nature? Here to talk so much more about this particular subject and other alternatives, ladies and gentlemen, is a previous guest we've had on the Dr. Sky Experience. Chris Hoare is a disaster response and telecom national security spokesperson for Sat123.com. He's a seasoned entrepreneur with a career spanning tech, satellite communications, and emerging technologies. From trading floors in London to early digital marketing in the U.S., he has helped build and support businesses focused on practical, reliable communication solutions. And with that, let's get right to it, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome our special guest. Chris, good morning. Thank you for being up with us on the Dr. Sky Experience for a repeat performance of what you're about to tell us. How are you this morning?
I'm great, Doctor. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And, I just mentioned, and it's serious, I don't want to be alarmist by any means, but the sun, as you know, and so many people out there might wonder, is now in the throes of Sunspot Cycle 25, which is not over by any means. And you, with your expertise, bring us to the realization of what happens if our cell systems go down. What happens if the electrical grid gets punched out? And we know the fragility of the electrical grid across the nation. Not my words, but those that are specialists in their field. Talk to us about what Sat123.com provides, and then let's get into a conversation and open up the lines at 1-800-848-9222 with people's questions and concerns as we move into a very energy-dependent holiday season.
Well, yes, indeed. Sat123.com, we've been around for about 20-plus years now, and we specialize in providing emergency communications. And those would be satellite phone communications, satellite internet communications, and we supply these to the U.S. government, the U.S. military, to large corporations, and to individuals, both here in the U.S. and around the world. Look, when the power grid goes down, everything goes down that relies on the grid. So everything is basically below that, and that includes, of course, power. That, of course, includes communications. And communications are what we survive on, right? I mean, if you leave your house without your cell phone in the morning, the first thing you do is turn around and go back and get it.
Exactly.
Because that's how much we depend on it. But imagine if the cell phone stopped working, and not just for an hour or two, but for days or weeks or even longer. These scenarios are very real. Just this year, we saw an entire country in Europe, Spain, that was completely taken offline because the power grid failed. And that was for over 24 hours, and that meant no communications, no banking, no commerce, nothing, because, again, everything relies on that. So we need to be prepared for these kind of disasters, and satellite communications is one of the few ways to do that.
Interesting story. Again, more information on Chris and his organization, SAT123, sat123.com, as you listen to the Dr. Sky Experience. Chris, I'm fascinated by this subject. I know many, many years ago, during the time that Osama bin Laden was hiding out in Tora Bora and other locations around the earth, we obviously, I'm sure the CIA and others had ability to track him, but finally we got him. But to talk about that, because he always had, as we heard, he did go on a cell phone, not a cell phone, but a satellite phone for a short period of time. Tell us about the development of satellite phones, if people are concerned about the differences between their regular phone, thus the word satellite means it's up there in the sky. How did these satellite phones, when did they really start to come into the marketplace? That's interesting.
Well, this goes back to the late 90s, and it was developed by Motorola originally, and they put a ton of money into it. But there wasn't a huge demand and market for it, and there was a massive investment that they made. So phones back then, satellite phones cost, between $10,000 and $20,000 or more, and you were paying, $30, $40, $50 a minute for the service. So, there wasn't a huge market for that, and the company had to reorganize, but it did so. And we formed Sat123.com, fairly shortly after that, and we're at a place today where satellite phones we offer them for free with activation. But one big advantage of satellite phones is that they work absolutely anywhere. Because as you know, I'm sure only 10% of the planet Earth is actually covered by regular cell phone service.
Didn't know that.
The rest of the planet.
Tell us that again. I'm having a hard time hearing you on this one, but it's my fault for not being able to put the microphone closer in the headphone. But describe that number again. I'm amazed. What did you say about the percentage of people with cell phones around the world?
Well, it's only about 10% of the actual planet is covered by cell phone service because, look, they only put cell phone towers where they can make a profit. And there have to be a certain number of people that live in that area or operate in that area for them to get their money back and make a profit. So that's why they only put them in certain areas. I mean, when you see these maps on these ads on TV, or, for these big cell phone companies, you see all these dots. It looks like the whole country's covered. But anyone who's an outdoorsman, sportsman, hunter, fisher will tell you that once you get off the beaten track, those bars disappear, and you are pretty much on your own unless you have another form of emergency communication.
So, Chris, I would imagine any of the inhabitants of Antarctica at this point in time have really what? Not to be funny, no cell phone coverage because there's not enough people to justify it, as you described the business model. So you need a satellite phone. And do they work even in places like Antarctica? I would hope so.
Yeah, and you know the network that works for the most coverage would be the Iridium network, and we offer that service. It's a great service. The Inmarsat network covers almost as much, but is a little shy at the North and South Pole. But the Iridium network works literally anywhere. As long as you can see the sky, you can make or receive a call or send or receive a text. So yeah, we do good business up there, and of course in Alaska as well.
Well, Chris, again, I appreciate your time here on the Dr. Sky Experience, and I'm sure the listeners do. And again, ladies and gentlemen, many of the guests that we do get, my email is just drsky@wabcradio.com, not guaranteeing that everyone that you suggest, but Chris, it's impressive to listen to the alternatives to what might happen. And we don't want to be negative. We just want to give people open their minds to alternatives to what they may not be able to hear on other broadcasts around the country, around the world. And we appreciate, again, your time. I want to jump onto something right now that I think is a little bit nefarious in the sense that, wow, it could be a major issue and probably is right now. And that is the weakness, and I want to hear in your opinion, the weakness of the U.S. Let's talk about the United States first. The electrical grid here in our nation. Talk about what you see, the look-see. If you were looking out the window, would you tell us that we need a hell of a lot of repairs or we're kind of in an okay shape? What say you on that?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, the grid that we have in this country is old, and it needs a major upgrade. Of course, that is not something that can be done overnight. There's no single company or politician that can snap their fingers and make that happen. You know, some estimates put the cost of replacing the entire grid north of $5 trillion. That's a lot of money to anybody.
It is.
But, you know, there are other issues with the grid. It's just we've had basically a flat demand for electricity over the last 20 years. We haven't really seen much of an increase. We now have, you know, a huge surge in increase coming from AI and the data centers that run AI. And there are a lot of people who are smarter than me who are questioning whether or not, you know, or how long we can sustain this kind of growth, you know, into the future with the growth of AI. You know, also the grid is not very well protected. We've seen numerous instances in the last couple of years of kind of lone wolves taking out, you know, substations with something as simple as a shotgun, you know, and that means that we've got single points of failure, and we have them everywhere. If you look at China, the CCP, you know, not everyone's favorite party, of course, but they are investing heavily in the grid and, of course, in the power stations that supply that grid. And I think we need to be paying attention to that.
We sure do.
Doing the same thing here.
Well, Chris, you're reading my mind because we're going on the theme what you just talked about lone wolf attacks. I believe, help us on this, I'm sure you have better information. Allegedly, some people, quote, described as terrorists, attacked a substation in and around San Jose, California. And they used certain type firearms to blow up a small substation, which then cascaded to what? A whole major blackout to an entire area. Thus the point, it's pretty easy if somebody wanted to do something like this. And please explain more about that, because I think we're talking about the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the domino effect, right? It's the same kind of thing we saw when AWS had that outage at the US East 1 data center. And, you know, so basically if you knock over one domino, the next one falls. And that's a kind of a construct of how the grid was set up originally and how it was built. And it shows a very, you know, a very poor weakness in its ability to sustain even a minor attack from a couple of people. You know, the grid is also subject to a lot of attack from cyber warfare, from cyber attacks. In my mind, what happened in Spain earlier this year was most likely a cyber attack. The Spanish authorities don't say that, but, you know, there are a lot of people in North Korea, China, Iran, Russia, there are thousands of these guys there who the government pays to do nothing but attack our infrastructure and steal our data. So we need to understand that. That's very real. That's not going to go away. And we need to make sure that our grid is protected and not as vulnerable as it is today.
Joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience, and proud to call him a friend, of this radio show. Chris Hoare is the official spokesperson for SAT, SAT123.com. And your questions and comments, ladies and gentlemen, about alternatives, concerns that you may have with what's going on with the grid itself. Maybe you've experienced a lot of difficulties. Maybe you know, working in the field yourself, maybe you could help and describe some of the issues that are pertinent at 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. Chris, I know I'm moving at the speed of light here, and we certainly appreciate you to answer these particular situations the best that we can with your experience. Let's talk about one that's really important, and I know this is the highlight of why we wanted to have you here, among others. AI straining the power grid, and thus electricity costs going up. Now, before you answer, many of our listeners in the New York metropolitan area, the home base of Talk Radio 77 WABC and other parts around the country, are saying, particularly in the state of New Jersey, let's say, and maybe others in that area, seeing totally amazing increases. And it was actually an issue that I think was very popular in the last gubernatorial election, which just happened back in November. Talk about that, because this is amazing. These data centers, we spoke last night with Patrick Wood about it. Describe it from your perspective of what's going on.
Well, yeah, look, the growth of AI, is absolutely incredible, but somebody's got to foot the bill, and unfortunately it seems to be the U.S. consumer. Not only are we paying to use these LLMs, but we're seeing our electricity prices rise like we have not seen in years. I mean, on average, it appears that just this year, in the first 5 months of 2025, electric prices nationwide jumped by nearly 10%. It's the fastest increase in decades. But what's more concerning is how these prices are going to rise in the future.
That's amazing.
In 2024, U.S. data centers used 180 odd terawatt hours of electricity. And by 2030, that's going to be up to around 400 to 500 terawatt hours. That's a 133% increase, and could be representing as much as 10% of total U.S. electricity use. And
wow.
So that is going to create problems.
Well, help us on this. I mean, is it a misunderstanding on my part or other people that may have shared this with me? I don't know if it's right. They're not generating their own electricity at the data centers. They're pulling it off the grid. I mean, that seems pretty simple. Your response, they're not generating their own power. They're using it, pulling it off the grid, correct?
Well, yeah, they are for the most part right now, although there is a lot of investment being made into new power stations that will basically be built for these data centers. There are issues there, of course, because you can't just build a power plant. You need to, in almost every state, it needs to be considered or regulated as a utility, and that has, so there are a lot of barriers for companies building, kind of private power plants. The other issue is it takes a long time to get a power plant online. Over in China, they saw this coming, as we talked about before, I think, and have invested heavily in alternative and more efficient nuclear power, using mostly technology that we developed here in the U.S. and then abandoned in the 70s and 80s. Wow. So, you've got three problems. You've got increasing usage, you've got a grid that needs upgrading, and you don't have enough power stations to provide the power in the first place. So this is a big issue for sure.
We're almost at the bottom of the hour, the hard break, as people know out there, as we continue Theater of the Mind, the Dr. Sky Experience. Your questions and comments, concerns, what they may be, ladies and gentlemen, at 1-800-848-9222. Chris, tell me about this. I read somewhere, and I don't believe everything I read on the internet, that most of the generators for these power plant stations are manufactured in China. And if we had a massive failure of the power grid, it's almost impossible to get them in a just-in-time situation unless we stockpile these, and I don't know what they're doing, but simply, is that basically true, that most of that is not made here in the United States? Is that a fact or fiction? What say you?
Well, look, we buy a tremendous amount of our electronics and equipment from China for all of our industries, and I think this is what President Trump's been talking about, and he's right on this. We need to be making more of this critical infrastructure and equipment here in the U.S., but again, this is not something that you can just snap your fingers and there it is. There is a ramp-up time for this. So, yeah, there's no doubt that whether it's telecommunications networks, power plants, even, jet engines and so on, there's an awful lot of stuff coming out of China that we completely rely on. the other problem with buying electronics and electronic equipment and so on from China is that we've caught them putting back doors into this equipment, meaning that essentially they from Beijing or wherever can see what that equipment is doing and then potentially even control it, shut it off, and that is, I think, one of the most concerning things and should be the reason that we start manufacturing this essential equipment here in the U.S. But we need to start soon because it does take an awful lot of time and we've got a lot of catching up to do.
Lots of problems, but great solutions from the great guests that you, ladies and gentlemen, tell us that we bring to the Dr. Sky Experience. Chris, you know this. Off air, we were talking about it. We're going to attack that particular subject that we're going to talk about. And what is that subject in hour number 2? We hear news stories about a Airbus A320 descending out of the sky hundreds of feet. Some said thousands, but it was hundreds of feet because of some sort of a glitch in the operational system on board the aircraft. That, of course, a system we're going to get into a conversation with a good friend of mine, Scott Dweck, in the second hour. He's a retired airline pilot who's flown this particular aircraft. But the allegations come, and they're not accurate, in my opinion. That's why we go to the great guest. What was the cause of this? Some say the solar flare activity and flight altitude affected and scrambled some of the computer. And also, how about this, ladies and gentlemen? Another theory, we talk about this in the astronomical world, and maybe it's not unproven, maybe it is to be proven. Cosmic rays, what are they? High-energy particles, protons, and atomic nuclei traveling at nearly light speed. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, from deep space, they hit our atmosphere. And yes, they were discovered back in 1936, and maybe earlier, by a scientist called Victor Hess. Is that the solution? Is that the problem? Well, is that the answer to the problem, I should say, more correctly, as we talk about this? That's a fascinating subject, Chris. I know you're also privy to this. You mentioned to me that your brother is what, a pilot who flew this or flies this particular aircraft?
It's actually my father.
Your father.
And I was talking to him about this morning. He has over 7,000 hours on the A320, starting from the first day of its use in the world. So he had some input for us, and I'll be sharing that with you at the top of the next hour.
Well, absolutely, ladies and gentlemen. Always great guests that you tell us. 1-800-848-9222. And on the other side of this hard break, ladies and gentlemen, I've put together something to wish everybody the most Merry Christmas. That's a little Christmas story that we put together just for your enjoyment. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. Happy holiday celebrations to each and every one of you and our family on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Chris Orr, official spokesperson for SAT123.com, and he's with us. And Chris, I would imagine, and you are doing it, lighting up the phone lines. Let's say good morning to Alexi in Queens. Alexi, you got in early. Your questions or comments, and happy holidays to you.
Yes, sir. Interesting little story about Christmas. Very pleasing. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. What I'm saying here is that this country is basically 30 to 40 years behind the times on energy generation. You have the various nuclear reactor sites, TMI, and the other one that was closed because of Democratic influence and politicians of the Democratic elite. Claiming it is poisoning the reservoir, poisoning the water, the people living nearby. But you know what the problem is that this country takes a very casual attitude towards the future. We worry about the future when it comes. And this is the problem. With this AI, I am frightened to death that when they start this AI, it will draw so much power that blackouts and brownouts will be frequent.
Well, we're hoping, Alexa, that we're not scaring you, but I want Chris to jump in on your commentary because, wow, you always bring up some very interesting, insightful points. Chris, this is interesting, your comment to what Alexi's talking about.
Yeah, Alexi, look, I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the biggest problem is that we don't have a plan. You know, what we're really doing, it seems, is looking to the next election, and too many politicians will say whatever it takes to get elected and not really care about, you know, what's going to happen down the road. You know, over in China, they don't have to get elected, so they do have a plan, and they've been working on increasing their power production and getting ready for this kind of demand that they foresaw for AI for a long time. And I'm not a big fan of the CCP by any means, but, you know, we are falling behind and we need to catch up, if, you know, let alone take the lead. I think we got a long way to go there, but we do need to have a broader long-term outlook for this. And again, this is not something that can be fixed overnight. Yes. It's going to take years.
Alexi, your closing comment as we continue to move through time and space here. Appreciate you.
Yes. What I find shocking is that Trump is preoccupied with AI and various other things. He has not addressed certain issues with the energy problem in the United States is a big issue. As you have more and more need for electricity, what is he waiting for? The previous presidents, Biden and Obama and such, and they just sat back and said, well, we'll worry about it when it happens. That's a very poor attitude. And what's worse is that the energy consumption here in New York is astronomical. You have buildings with air conditioning units on top, like the size of a 20-car garage. I am not kidding you.
No, I hear you, Alexi, and we're looking for solutions, and I hope through this program, that's why we do this. Our guests can help us to provide solutions to the average man and woman out there who doesn't have extensive resources. But, Alexi, time permits us to move forward because we must. But thank you, and a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody out there. Let's say good morning to Eduardo in Florida, the great state of Florida. You're on the air. How are you this morning?
Yeah, good morning. I saw this on Daily Mail earlier this evening, and it's interesting you're bringing up this topic. So it's what's happening with Venezuela and Mr. Maduro, which is kind of like a subordinate of Russia, and they have threatened to blow out the lights, you know, do some kind of hack and maybe...
Like North Korea does, right? They shut them off, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what did you guys think about... Does a action follow a reaction, and we do it to Moscow? I mean, how do we protect ourselves from a threat like that?
Great question, Eduardo. Chris, you got the floor.
Yeah, Eduardo, look, I mean, it is a great question. I think we have to prepare for we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. You know, our grid here is very vulnerable. That's been made clear time and time again with the outages that we see somewhere in the country pretty much every week. But look, these guys, these nation states that want to see our downfall, they are very aware of the weaknesses in our utilities, you know, including our water supply, air traffic control, and the power grid and all of our communications networks. So, you know, we have to be proactive. We have to do a better job at protecting our infrastructure. You know, because right now, again, we've seen too many lone wolf incidents where even just individuals can take out a small substation that could cause a domino effect. But we don't want to see what I think is coming, which is a coordinated cyber attack on our utilities throughout this country. That could be devastating. So we need to expect this. We need to plan for it. Whatever is going on in the political world, this is something, cyber warfare is happening every single day, and we are not as ready for it as we need to be.
Eduardo, you have the floor. Please continue. A nice response from you or your own response.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, cyber war. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, hopefully this won't happen.
Yes. Well, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, yes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, my friend. In the beautiful state of Florida. Beautiful. Let's say good morning to Pete in Staten Island. Pete, good morning. You've been patient. How are you this morning?
Hey, Dr. Sky. A pleasure to speak to you. I'd like to speak about with these electric cars. If the grid goes out, is that going to make them just shut down wherever they stand in the road?
Well, Chris, you're the expert on this subject. I'll turn it over to Chris.
I mean, yeah, certainly, Pete, a lot of people are going to be out of luck with their cars if the grid goes down. Obviously you are able to have home chargers and solar panels that can provide power for you at home if you can afford that kind of thing. But look, this is a big problem, right? The more we move to electricity, there are obviously a lot of benefits for electric cars. But then on the flip side, if you can't get access to electricity cheaply and readily, what do you do? So I think you're right to be concerned about this, but it goes way beyond cars, because I can't think of much of anything that doesn't rely on the power grid these days, and we rely on those things. So we as a nation have become far too dependent, on electricity and on electric powered machines and items.
Well, as you're talking about the electric car situation, imagine if we could find a way to recharge those cars in quick time. I don't think you'd ever do it, right, Chris, and right, Pete, in the time that it takes you to fill up with regular fuel like gasoline or diesel fuel at a pump. But Pete, you bring up that subject. Are you an owner of an electric car? May I ask, if you don't mind sharing?
No, I was thinking about it. I've just gotten offers with tax rebates and everything. Oh, yeah. But believe it or not, I drive a 2001 Toyota Corolla where I'm getting, believe it or not, 40 miles to a gallon. I have it tuned up fine, and I maintain it myself, and I got good mechanics, and it's I've been very, very lucky with it. Very little money.
Well, you bet. And to give a plug to Toyota, we're not in the car business here. We're the dealership side, but they make that's one of the most popular cars out there. I drive a couple of smaller alternate type Toyotas, the Scions, and I'm getting probably 35, 40 miles per gallon. And pretty much happy. I almost have 200,000 miles on one of those vehicles. And with proper maintenance, that car will last forever. Pete, thank you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. And all the good things to you and your family. Thanks for joining us. Well, Chris, this is interesting. Time flies here as we move through the speed of the speed of the night in the early morning here. But that's very interesting. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, what Chris is talking about here, we're obviously so fascinated by what happens when this power grid has a cyber attack. I mean, that's just incredible. And look at all the things that are happening in that world. Everything's computers, and it doesn't take much, right, to hit us with a cyber attack that's very devastating to the entire nation and other nations around the world, not just us. That's an amazing story. I hope it doesn't happen, but we need solutions, right, to these particular problems, and not just people who just say they'll kick the can down the road, right?
Yeah, and look, the reality is that cyber warfare is World War III in my mind. It is going on every minute of every day in every country around the world. It's very profitable to steal data, to get access illegally to networks, to steal cryptocurrency, whatever it is. But on the other side of it, you've got people who aren't doing it for profit. They're doing it to influence what happens, especially here in this country. That's why we see constant attacks, again, on our utilities, on our banks, on our hospitals. They're very prone to this. Whether they're trying to take networks offline, steal data, or they're ransomware attacks. Yes. These things are constant and they are growing. And we need to, we have more fighter planes than anyone else in the world and more bombers than anyone else in the world, but we need to have more cyber protection than anyone else in the world.
You said it well. Bill in New Jersey, David on line 5. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen, and you, ladies and gentlemen, more time, much more time to come with your time to ask the questions at 1-800-848-9222. We will be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Electricity is really just organized lightning, according to We Miss Him a Lot, George Carlin. 47 minutes after the hour, as we go to the top of the hour, Chris Hors, the official spokesperson for SAT-SAT123.com, provider of satellite communication and emergency preparedness solutions. And we continue with the callers. Let's say good morning to Bill in New Jersey. Thanks for your patience. You are on the air.
Good morning. Good morning. So I guess you heard about past few weeks that Bill Gates has, with his donations, has taken the money from from Green New Deal, apparently, to feeding children. Based upon the answer is money. What's the question? that from what we hear, and I'm in the technology business, that he wants to invest in 3 Mile Island to open up that because the power grid will not support the data farms. And I see that, with other companies as well. There's the Oyster Creek power plant, which is in Waretown, New Jersey. I'm sure that's going to be fired up as well. So, but as far as the grid is concerned, within a few years, I believe that will be taken care of.
Well, let's hope so. You give us some enlightenment. I like that, and brightness. Chris, this is interesting because if that is true, I didn't read that, Bill, but I take your word for it that he's moving the money over to something else to what? Regenerate nuclear power. Chris, your response. This is interesting.
Well, yeah, look, I think it's the right move. As your callers have pointed out, China has done exactly that, because they see that there is better technology that we created again and abandoned, such as fast breeder reactors, molten salt reactors that produce more electricity with less input, less risk, and less byproduct, less waste. So I think, I hope that we do see the growth that we need. The question is, how much will the growth be? Whether it doubles or triples or quadruples or more, I don't know. But we're going to need a lot more power than we have today. But again, just the power alone is not the sole solution. The grid has to come with it. I would like to add that the President Trump's executive order of the Genesis mission, is trying to address that. It hasn't got a lot of press. But I think the president does understand that we have this issue and needs to be dealt with, and he's putting the Department of Energy in charge of this. And the purpose of this mission is to increase AI innovation and growth here in the U.S., as well as upgrading the power grid and increasing the power going onto the grid. So there definitely is hope, but remains to be seen what we actually get done.
Bill, you get the last word in this conversation. Please continue if you're still with us.
Yeah, I just want to ask Chris, what do you think about, because I'm also into cybersecurity, and I know within the, I'll just give one industry, within the transportation industry, I'm not going to say what state, but, they get approximately 1 billion intrusions a day.
Wow.
And 99.9% of them get taken care of. But eventually something absolutely will happen. How can we prevent that?
Wow, that's powerful there.
Yeah, it's a great question, Bill. I'm glad you brought it up because I don't think a lot of people understand this. Obviously, you're in the industry and you quite rightly brought this up, and this is true, and it's happening everywhere, every day, all the time. I think for me, we need to move to decentralized storage, decentralized compute, sovereign AI would certainly help, and sovereign storage, but the centralization of this is, at the heart of the issue. When we rely so much on the same equipment or the same providers, when they go down, we go down. That's why, one attack, when successful, is then deployed to everyone else who has the same kind of vulnerability. And so these things just cascade around the planet. But I think decentralization, is going to be a big part of it.
Bill, thank you for your participation, and most happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah to all of our listeners out there. Let's continue to code at the top of the hour here. We have many callers. Let's go to David in line 5. Good morning. You're on the air. How are you this morning, David?
Dr. Sky, if you think it's a population increase that the Democrats brought into this country, they add to the problem. I also live in a neighborhood where insulation is coming off of the wires. That means too much current being drawn to heat the wires.
Yeah, we need a whole revision, as you're talking about, David, of the whole concept of the wires. If the wires are leaking current and power, that's not good. But remember, right, Chris, you would, second the nomination. It's not the voltage, it's the amperage. But Chris, your response here, David's bringing up some interesting points.
Yeah, look, it's just another symptom of an aging and decaying power grid. Again, just another reason that we need to be focused on upgrading this grid to not just what we need today, but what we're going to need in the future, because AI is in so many ways increasing the speed of everything, including the speed of change and the speed of growth. Again, for 20 years in this country, we saw no growth in the demand of electricity up to like 2021, 2022. And now we're seeing the demand skyrocket, and the grid is not ready for that.
David, thank you. We're going to move forward here. We got a lot of callers, but appreciate you, and hopefully you'll call us on the Dr. Sky Experience again. Let's say good morning to John in Smithtown, Long Island. You're on the air. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? Listen, I worked almost all my life in with gas turbine engines in the airlines and also in power generation.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, it's a great. I would say a frictional loss that all these battery charged cars and everything are hitting the market. I think it's costing us a lot. It takes a lot of energy to produce electricity from a gas turbine engine, and transmitting that energy to lines of where the battery charges and everything are. That's just a loss. I think that was a great wool pulled over our eyes with the Green New Deal, that everything should be battery operated and electric, and
can't sustain it. You're right, John. But let me let Chris go ahead and respond, because we're almost running out of time. But hey, appreciate you, John. You bring up good points from your experience.
All right, thank you. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody.
Hey, absolutely. I hope you'll call us again. But go ahead, Chris, because we got a few more callers. We'll try to get them on the air.
Yeah, look, I would agree with John that, we are often misled. The people who are telling us these facts about what's going to happen and the benefits are often the very people who are going to profit the most from them. So we always have to be skeptical. Look, just on that news break there, we heard the CEO of Google talking about why he thinks that nationwide AI regulations are best for everyone. And they might be good in some ways, but they're definitely going to be good for Google. So people are always talking their book, and we need to be wary of that. We do need to be very skeptical.
John in Long Island, you're on the air as we go to the top of the hour. How are you this morning? Do we have John? How about Josh in Connecticut as we wrap up hour number one? Good morning to you, Josh, if you're on with the air with us.
Good morning. I don't want to take too much of your time. Thanks, Dr. Sky.
Always a pleasure.
So I just quickly, thank you. So just quickly, I'm thinking about the safeguard of the cell phones, because now the reliance is so high. We put it in the back of our mind, but we don't realize there was an incident that took place about a week ago where Verizon, there was a glitch and everybody's phone was down.
Yes,
and so we ripped out the call boxes and the landlines, and what do we do? It's like I was thinking, I saw they're selling these high frequency band walkie-talkies that I'm thinking in a case of emergency, how would something like that work? And finalized, when Edison came out, he got pushed out by ideas of the actual grid with the waterfall. But I think his idea was a mainstay where it was compartmentalized to the community. And,
interesting.
How might that work? There's an idea behind that, I think. Thank you.
Well, Josh, let me let Chris respond here. We're almost out of time, but you bring up very good points also here, as all the callers here. We appreciate you. And for some reason, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't get in during each of the hours, always extend call back to 1-800-848-9222. We're about, of course, to move to the top of the hour. And hour number 2, we have another guest that will be joining us, including a continuation of Chris Orr. Scott Dweck, a good friend of ours who's been an airline pilot, talking about the A320 incident. Was it solar flares? Was it cosmic rays? And we'll get to talk with him and also hear Chris's response. But Chris, the response that you want to give back to Josh, he spent some time giving us some good points. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I would absolutely say that everyone should be looking at alternatives and backups for communications to cell phones. So whether it's satellite phones, whether it's whether it's the walkie-talkies he was talking about or amateur radio bands, there are other methods. But when it comes to landlines, getting rid of landlines, I think we're always too quick to get rid of old technology because of the new bright shiny thing. But landlines have a lot of benefits. I mean, look, people say, well, if you have a landline, a burglar can come to your house and he can cut the line, and then you're without communications. But these days, people robbing houses bring cell phone jammers with them, so you can't call for help from your cell phone.
Absolutely.
You know, so is that any better? I mean, I think we need to think about things more clearly and think about redundancies for communications, whether it's for a home or a business or whatever, you know, because putting all of your reliance on one technology is never a good idea in my mind.
Theater of the Mind continues, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us, of course, as we move deeper into your weekend, and we appreciate everybody here on this particular radio station, and it's a privilege and honor. I want to thank owner and operator John Katzimatidis, and from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, for giving me this opportunity of a lifetime to be behind this microphone as we, of course, talk about mysteries of the unknown and some of the things that affect us down here on planet number 3, and, of course, to our helmsmen, Tony and Bill, that make sure that every one of those watts is directed generously in your direction. We'll be right back with hour number 2.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of the Dr. Sky Experience Theater of the Mind continues here on the Powerhouse, Talk Radio 77, WABC. As we're continuing our conversation with special guest Chris Hors, the official spokesperson for Sat123.com, a leading provider of satellite communication and emergency preparedness solutions, he's with us till the top of the second hour. Ladies and gentlemen, an interesting story that's been around in the news, and I wanted to address it with the best of experts and our continuance with our special guest, Chris Hors. The story goes like this. After an Airbus A320 aircraft unexpectedly lost altitude and 15 passengers were injured in October, Airbus linked the incident to damage suffered by flight software due, and they quote, to an intense solar radiation storm. However, experts have raised questions about the company's analysis at this point in time. Joining us on the line is a good friend of ours, Scott Dweck, retired airline pilot. He, of course, has a vast experience in flying, particularly the A320, the Airbus A320, and other particular aircraft. Scott Dweck, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us during this particular time of day and night. How are you?
And good morning, Dr. Sky, and Merry Christmas to you and your staff. And it is a beautiful evening here in Santa Barbara, California, where I sit here and talk to my good friend, Dr. Sky.
Well, thank you. And this is interesting. And you tell us, and this is not because of me, ladies and gentlemen, Scott, in your own words, just tell us, you listen to this radio station, what? Probably more than many people do, and they should. And everybody should continue to listen. But tell us your affiliation and your addiction, as I call it, to this radio station. Please tell us. It's powerful.
I'm a talk radio junkie, Dr. Sky, and I go through all the stations and podcasts, and I've really gotten to kind of bookmark WABC. I really love the programming and all the different talk show hosts you have on the radio station, and I bookmark it. I listen to it all day long. I know all your shows and really enjoy the station, and of course listen to you on Saturday nights, 9 o'clock here on the West Coast.
That's very kind. As all the great hosts that we have on this radio station, as I mention often, ladies and gentlemen, you can, of course, hear many of the podcasts that all of these great hosts are providing at, of course, WABCRadio.com and RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. Chris, let's say hi, if you'd be so kind to say hello to Scott as we get into a conversation about what might be of this mystery with this aircraft and allegedly having solar flares and cosmic rays. Please say hello to our guest, Scott, if you'd be so kind, Scott. Chris.
Good evening, Scott. It's a pleasure to meet you, mate.
Yeah, good evening, Chris. I listened to Hour 1 and very entertaining. Thank you for your participation.
Well, let's start off in this conversation so everybody can understand. From your flight deck seat, you've flown this A320, the Airbus A320. I'm understood that it's probably one of the most popular in manufactured numbers of any aircraft out there, which is surprising to me. I always thought Boeing had the absolute lead. But talk about it from the flight deck and the story that you've read. What is your analysis as being an Airbus A320 pilot? Talk to us about this story.
Well, I've got about 8 years on the Airbus A320 and the Airbus A330 aircraft. Of course, the A320 was the first commercial fly-by-wire aircraft to go into service. Now, the military aircraft had been doing this for years before, but the A320 as a fly-by-wire aircraft was a very controversial thing when it came out in April of 1988. Currently, there are 6,440 Airbus A320s in the air right now.
Wow!
And it's a fantastic product, and I've flown Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, and Airbus, and have enjoyed all my experiences on all those aircraft. But on October 30th, Dr. Sky, we had a very interesting situation happen on a JetBlue flight from Cancun to Newark.
Okay.
And it ended up diverting to Tampa because there was a 4-second upset with injuries, by the way, that caused this aircraft to have an uncontrolled pitch incident. And we call that an upset in the business. It's anything that happens that's unscheduled like that. And they diverted the aircraft. And after investigations, they found out that there was what they call a bit flip. I'm not a computer expert, but
a bit slip. Okay, like bits and bytes in computers, right?
Correct. And there was a software update done on one of the 7 flight control computers. This is namely the ELAC, the Elevator Aileron Control Computer. There are 2 of them, and they operate one individually at a time, and they can flip back and forth depending on the situation. But they basically, it's a redundancy of that computer, which is why there are 2 of them. And apparently what had happened was this latest upgrade or software update lacked the protection that is what they call a hardened protection of these type of electronic solar flares that can happen. And the software upgrade did not have that electronically hardened protection in that upgrade. And they had some sort of electrical interference, which caused the ELAC computer to switch from A to B. And when that happened, there was a disruption in the flight controls and caused this momentary 4-second upset. And that's why the crew diverted for precautionary reasons.
That's interesting, Scott, and I'm just curious to let the listeners know, when you sit in that particular, captain's seat in the co-pilot's chair to the right, you're looking at this aircraft, you're flying it by what? Like a joystick, to describe this to the audience that may not have knowledge of this up front, because you're not allowed in the cockpit. There you go.
Well, that's a good point. Now, here's the deal. Ever since the Wright brothers flew an airplane, there has been a mechanical control between the flight deck and the flight controls. There's literally on a 747, these cables run the entire length of the airplane. It's literally thousands of pounds of wire, cable, and pulleys that operate the aircraft. And the A320 was the first aircraft to have no mechanical connection between the cockpit and the flight controls. Literally, these computers fly the airplane via the joystick that the pilot controls. And it even produces an artificial feel to the pilot, so he feels like he's flying the airplane. But in essence, you're flying the trajectory.
Wow. That's interesting, Chris. I want to jump fast forward here because this is interesting to me, and I hope to the listeners, and we will get to the callers as I promise here. And our special guest also, continuing from hour number 1, is Chris Hoare, the official spokesperson for Sat123.com. But what I want to ask you, just to tell the audience the resilience that you've told me about this particular electronics, in your words, you were flying over what, Detroit, Michigan, and describe what happened from the cockpit. And this is an amazing story. Here we go.
You may remember this. It was Detroit Metro Airport when Bill Clinton was the president, and he was getting a haircut on Air Force One, and he was on the ramp. And he caused just a tremendous delay of aircraft coming into one of the busiest airport hubs in the United States. And I'm approaching in an A320, and it was inclement weather. We had thunderstorms in the area, and we got put in a holding pattern. And so we're on autopilot at about 12,000 feet, and we're doing this holding pattern in the middle of this very, very strong thunderstorm. And we got struck by a lightning bolt that literally... It was like an M80 went off in the cockpit.
Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah, wow. It was the flash of the lightning strike blinded us. Both of us. It was at night, and our vision slowly came back. And I was expecting blank screens, the aircraft in an upset and going off into who knows what.
Yes.
And all the screens were lit up. The autopilot was in command. Nothing had changed. We were absolutely in just perfect, holding pattern, speed and altitude. And it was a testament to what this airplane can go through. And I've heard that in the certification process, they just bombard these airplanes with gamma rays and electronic interference, whatever they can. And these instruments and controls and computers, they stay on and they stay intact. And it's an amazing thing to watch, really.
Scott Duett, the last question as we move through time and space here. Your opinion, fact or fiction, and what do you think we know, or what do we know? Was it a solar flare that interfered or cosmic rays? And we'll talk about that. Your final response on that one. It's important to hear.
Well, what basically happened was the upgrade they did not have that hardened protection. And it was a solar, what I heard at least, is it was a solar type of occurrence that caused this upset. So they did what you can do with your own computer. If you put an upgrade or a software update and it just operates the system worse than it did before the update, you can take the update out and reinstall the previous version and you're good to go. And that's what they did to these airplanes. And it was only about a 30-minute fix. None of these airplanes was really significantly impacted. It was during the Thanksgiving holiday, and basically these airplanes kept, they got them right back into service. So it was just about a 30-minute fix, and I would tell the traveling public, do not worry about these aircraft.
That's what we want to hear. That's interesting.
Yes,
and
exactly right.
The jury is still out, if there is an aviation jury, as what actually happened. But Chris, you're our special guest also, and I want to hear from you because your father has been flying these particular A320 aircraft with what? British Airways. Talk about that for a moment, if you would, please.
Yeah, my father, he is also retired now, like you, Scott, but he had 7,000 hours plus on the A320 starting from day one. And he said that in that time, he never had a single problem with the fly-by-wire system. So he was a huge fan of the aircraft, still is. And he said that we will find out, in his opinion, what exactly happened here. He said that the A320 has some of the most sophisticated flight recorders in the world, and so every single action, every single second, they can go back and look at that and really get to the bottom of this. But he just reiterated what you said, that this is one of the safest aircraft in the world, one of the best built aircraft in the world. And he's flown a lot like you. He flew the DC-10, he flew Concorde, he's flown so many aircraft, and of course, in his private life, many of the classic World War II fighter planes as well for fun. But yeah, no, a huge fan of the aircraft and a huge fan of Airbus in general.
Well, the mystery still exists out there, gentlemen, and we'll continue to look at answers because we try to open our minds to the public about the great mysteries. Scott, you get the last word. We've got to move forward. But again, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year to you. And hopefully one day I'll get to fly in your little, describe your little aircraft if you don't mind sharing that with the public.
I've got an experimental home-built Vans RV7 I take to air shows and display days. I do about 35 events a year, and I'm very well known on the circuit here. And I met Dr. Sky out of Buckeye for the Copper State Airfest. Yeah.
What a fly-in that was. That's amazing.
We hung out all day long at the airport and talked airplanes, and we had a great time.
Scott, thank you so much for participating. We will call on you in the future on aviation situations, but the jury's still out. We don't know. And just so the audience knows, here on this particular show, what the heck is a cosmic ray? As I mentioned before, high-energy particles, protons, and atomic nuclei. Get a load of this, folks. Traveling at nearly light speed from deep space. So when a star or supernova explodes, we're being bombarded by these objects or these particles. When they hit the atmosphere, they induce secondary particles, so they spread out. And obviously, they were discovered back in 1912. I made a mistake. By Victor Hess in a balloon experiment, and they're going through the universe at all times. So what, Chris and Scott? We may be vulnerable, and as you're telling us, we can fly safely, and that's a good bit of news. But we'll still investigate that. Scott, thank you. Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you soon. I appreciate your time.
You bet, Dr. Sky.
Let's continue here, and I don't know if we still have our caller line up here, but if we do, let's say good morning to Bernadette, who's a first-time caller. I hope your patience is there.
Yes,
and thank you for that.
Good morning,
How are you
Dr.
doing?
Sky.
Hi.
I'm great. I'm sitting here in North Wantor, Long Island, and saying I could never miss your show. It's just phenomenal.
Wow. Thank you.
You are great, and I love everything that you do, and I have a few questions about alternative sources of energy.
Please, by all means.
That may not be, okay. going back, I don't know the name of it, 10 or 15 years ago on CBS News on 60 Minutes. They reported on some type of a box that we all could have in our backyards that would generate energy. And it was all the go at that point, and then it disappeared. So that's one point. The second one I wanted to ask you about is my sister, who loved to ride her exercise bike, said it's not that hard to hook an exercise bike up to a generator in your home, and if the lights go out, everyone in the family get on the bike and do a few hours.
Wow.
And
that's
then,
your own electrical generating treadmill. There you go.
Right.
Or wheel.
She said, there you go. Is this a viable option? And
Chris?
the other one was,
Go ahead.
you know, having read about, you know, all kinds of sources of alternative energy. I had been reading about the kinetic energy that you create when you walk, you know, down the sidewalk, and how that would be a possibility to create energy to, you know, like keep Manhattan Island going. I don't know if that's fact or fiction. I don't know.
Well, Bernadette, you're bringing up some great points. I want Chris to respond because, wow, you come up with some home-based remedies for providing, you know, electrical power when maybe the power goes out. Chris, isn't this cool? I think this is nice.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
There's one more thing, two.
Okay.
I want to get satellite phones for all my family members for Christmas. And do you think Santa came from the Pleiades?
Say that again. I know about the Pleiades. What was the question, though?
Is that where Santa came from?
Yes. You know, I'm going to say yes, because it's the time of year, right, Bernadette? We want to make it happy, yes. And the Pleiades, in case people don't know, if you look high up into the sky during winter, it looks like the Little Dipper to many people, but it's about the size of your tiny little thumbnail on your little tiny finger at arm's length in the sky. But you never know, Bernadette. But no, it's cool because first-time callers, we love them here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Chris, lots of things Bernadette's asking about. Why don't you continue, please?
Well, yeah, lots of great questions there, Bernadette. First of all, when it comes to innovation suddenly disappearing, that story is unfortunately as old as time. If you look back into the early 20th century, you saw the car companies making sure that public transportation rail lines were ripped up in LA because you can't sell cars when you got a great public transportation system. In the same way, there's an awful lot of energy efficiency improvement kind of technology that was created, and those inventions and patents were bought up by companies and shelved to make sure that they could never be used. So I don't know about the box you were talking about that you saw at CBS, but it wouldn't be the first time that kind of thing had happened.
Wow.
When it comes to generating power at home, and I'm trying to keep track of all your questions here. Look, there's lots of ways to generate energy. It's not just the plug in the wall and the power grid. You know, at SAT 123, we offer solar panels that can power everything from handheld electronics to your entire house. And that, of course, that is every single day the sun is out. You'll be able to recharge your equipment or power your house without any need for any kind of gas or the power grid at all. So those kind of options are very affordable, from under $100 all the way up to a couple of thousand to power your entire house. But there are many other ways to generate electricity. Although cycling to create electricity might take a while if you're trying to power your house, but it would certainly get you fit. When it comes to kinetic energy, a lot of people are using exactly what you're talking about, the use of what is already happening, whether it's in roads or sidewalks or in malls. People walking on the floor can actually generate energy. So these things are not science fiction; they are science-backed. As far as how efficient all that is, I couldn't tell you, but that is absolutely in the works. And when it comes to sat phones for Christmas, yep, give us a call or check out sat123.com. We'd love to help you out with that. And we'll give you the phone for free with activation.
Wow, this is pretty cool here. And Bernadette, it's great that we have a first-time caller like you, and many thanks and kudos for the kind comments that you've made about the show. Because all we're trying to do here is what? We're opening people's minds to the mysteries of the universe. And not to stand on a soapbox here, it's because of the great guests like Chris Hoare and so many others that you've heard. Scott Dweck, a seasoned airline pilot. And, well, folks, in 2026, we're going to have a whole litany of people that I think you're going to love. But, Bernadette, you get the last word as we go almost to the hard break at the bottom of the hour. But Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you
Merry
and your family.
Christmas, Happy Holidays, and peace on earth.
Amen, my sister. And absolutely, thank you so much. A fascinating journey through time and space every time, ladies and gentlemen, with great guests. And you, the callers at 1-800-848-9222. And obviously we'll do everything we can to get you on the air. A fascinating subject, Chris, that we're talking about here. We still don't know, of course, as Scott was describing, and your dad flying the, legacy of this aircraft, the A320. But it's fascinating because when we go out into the solar system again, let me remind everybody, if you didn't hear it during hour number 1, and a major event has just happened again on the sun, and you would expect it to be because we're in the throes of what, Chris? Solar cycle 25. But I've been following this sunspot, and I'm going to recommend people, if you're listening right now and, not driving, go to spaceweather.com. This is an interesting resource that we use not only here on this show, but when I'm out doing, public programs. Right now, one of the lead articles is Earth-Directed Solar Flare and CME, Coronal Mass Ejection. This happened on December the 6th at around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this big sunspot group that's in the middle of the sun, it's not from that group. But how about this? The sunspot group is the distance between the Earth and the Moon. It's about 230,000 miles long. That's unusual. Now, if you have those eclipse glasses, you could actually look at the sun. Don't do this without eclipse glasses. You can actually see that sunspot group. But here's the big news. The solar flare is almost an X-level flare. That's pretty powerful. The higher the number of X, the more powerful. But they're saying, that is NASA and NOAA and SOHO, the observatory in space, that this solar mass ejection will hit the Earth by December the 9th, maybe putting on a nice display. But right, Chris? Who knows? It could interfere as it's already done to shortwave radio. So we have to be prepared in the event that solar activity, you can't control that, right, Chris? That's out of our hands.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And unfortunately, we down here on planet Earth are not ready for something like the Carrington event of 1859 that pretty much wiped out the wire service across the U.S. At the time. But today, look, Lloyd's of London estimates that such an event, if it happened today, would cost the U.S. anywhere up to $5.6 trillion in damages. And look, these kind of flares can affect satellites. And if you think about that, think about what are the most important satellites. It would be GPS, because the GPS system is how we make sure those thousands of planes flying above us right now don't run into each other. It's how we get around when we're driving. None of us know how to use a map anymore, right? You remember those? We just get our phones out and they talk to us and tell us where to go. But, we do remember maps, but people younger than us, they didn't live through that, and they very much rely on this kind of guidance that is all provided by GPS. And of course, our U.S. military runs on.
You're so right, Chris. And I go back in my day of looking at AAA, and not to give them a plug unnecessarily, but hey, the days of paper maps. I love paper maps. Remember National Geographic maps? So I study them. Maybe I'm a little strange, but some people may say, wow, I need my GPS. And I say to myself, without naming the individual, I ride with someone and they constantly have to have the GPS going with the thing blaring, when to me it's so simple just to know how to go from point A to point B. So you're right. Anything that affects the GPS. And tell me if I'm right on this before we go to this bottom of the hour break. The Chinese do not use the same system. They have their own dedicated GPS. They're not on the same one that we are. Am I correct in that assessment?
I believe you're right about that. The GPS was developed initially for the U.S. military, and then it was kind of opened up after that. But look, it's probably a good thing we're not using their system and they're not using ours. I would probably guess that they're probably spending more money on upgrading theirs at the moment. But look, these solar flares, these solar events that are happening, and like you rightly said, we cannot control, can cause damage beyond satellites on the ground. They could take out the major transformers that the grid is the heart of the power grid here in the country, and that could take from months to years. to fix that kind of situation. So, it's something we want to pay attention to, and it's something we should be ready for, no doubt.
Well said. More with Chris Hoare. He is the official spokesperson if you're just joining us or you're continuing to stay with us, which we appreciate. And we always love first-time callers like Bernadette here at 1-800-848-9222. The Dr. Sky experience continues in force on the other side of the heartbreak.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Ben Franklin may have discovered electricity, but is the man who invented the meter who made the money. An interesting quote from a former Chief Justice of the United States, Earl Warren. 32 minutes after the hour, we move at light speed, ladies and gentlemen, here in Theater of the Mind, as we talk with you, not at you, about these great mysteries of the universe and things that affect us here on planet number 3. Our special guest, Chris Hoare, is with us to the top of the hour. Let's say good morning once again to John in Long Island. You've been patient. You're on the air. How are you this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen. I want to inject a little humor in this whole thing in regards to this topic of yes. AI, electrical draw. I hope this is not going to be like a Y2K situation where there's hysteria and concern, and meanwhile the year 2000 happens and electricity, everything's in order.
Sure.
I just don't. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
No, go ahead. No, that's interesting. Yeah. Chris, John brings up something interesting in a lighthearted way. We all remember Y2K, but I think this is more serious, Chris. Please tell us.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I think if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of panic and fear-mongering about that. And there were a lot of people saying that, machines are going to replace all our jobs. And certainly some jobs were lost, but more jobs were created, and here we are 100 years plus later. So whilst AI, will certainly lead to some job losses, already has, it will also create a lot of jobs. The WEF, that I don't always believe, but World Economic Forum actually predicts that AI will create more jobs than it costs. And, honestly, who knows? There's a lot of guessing going on, but there is a lot of hysteria and panic, and, some bits being driven by people, who are talking their book again. But I think we need to look at everything has benefits and everything has negatives, right? And AI has a lot of benefits and has a lot of negatives, but I'm not sure how much one outweighs the other, if at all.
Very interesting. John, it's interesting to me here in Arizona and everybody listening. Electric rates are continuing to go up here, and it comes to a point where how sustainable is that for the average person when they're allocating so much of their monthly budgets? The percentiles are going up. John, you get the last word. We appreciate your commentary. Please continue.
I wouldn't doubt that President Trump is not on the issue. I'm pretty sure he's very efficient, very proactive, and I think this probably talk, especially he's in contact with Elon Musk. And may I state, the more efficient we could become with how things are run, the more wealthy we become, because it gives the average person to pursue better interests to add to the economy. It's not the technology always makes a country more wealthy. So we have a little bumps in the road, people get affected by it, but it does create new opportunities, and that's an economic way of looking at things too.
May I ask you, John, are you in the IT industry, or if you don't mind sharing, are you in any of those related
just industries? A businessman my whole life and looked at things differently, and then it just towards other things. And I like your show.
Well, I thank you so much. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. What else can we say? But it's the great callers, Chris, that we have, and obviously guests like yourself. So thank you for John for being part of our program. We appreciate you. Let's say good morning to Jeff, and good morning to him in Brooklyn Heights. You're on the air. How are you?
Thank you for taking my call. For about 10 years, I was the purchasing agent buyer of electronic equipment for a number of patriotic organizations. And we have radio receivers and transmitters all over the country, but they transmit and they receive through the earth. Now, one time, America's greatest secret in World War I was the Rogers radio system, where we could listen to transmissions from Europe through the earth. So the thing is that this is another dimension that is never mentioned. The second thing is how many patents are secretized under the 1951 Act. I mean, a lot of these great patents, I've known people that have gotten patents and have been told, look, you can't talk about this, you can't disclose this, this is all secretized. This is just done. They just do this by fiat. The government does. So the thing is that who knows what's being taken away from us or kept away from us. But one thing's for sure, this whole through the earth thing. And again, there's a whole basic question of, look, if space is full of energy, why aren't we tapping space? I mean,
Boy, you're like my best friend there, Jeff. You bring up something, and I don't want to take too much time away from Chris, but talk to us a little bit more about this concept. You're saying radio transmissions through the earth. I've never heard this. Describe it if you can.
Oh, yes. Well, everybody can look up. Well, there are two Rogers radio systems, but the one that was what was in World War I, we knew more about the day-to-day conduction of the war than many capitals in Europe, because we were having transmissions going through the earth to Baltimore and then shipped into the White House. See, this is all hidden history. I know you won't hear this from the average ham radio, but the thing is that you can send energy tremendously through the earth. And what we did basically is when the United States government was divesting of all its tube radio equipment, like our 390s, our 392s, SP600s, HO 50s and 60s, all of those great receivers and transmitters were basically just dumped at bargain prices, at pennies on the dollar, and we bought them up. And they're in bunkers all over the country. And if something ever happens in this country, the great network of transmission, the great mesh network, is going to be through the earth. That's amazing,
Jeff. No, I'm getting a detailed education from you. But Chris, is this something you know about too? I mean, this is fascinating to hear. I'm amazed at this. Go ahead, please.
I'm afraid I don't know too much about this, but I do get Jeff's point that, there is a lot of great technology out there that we don't know about. And the reason, in my mind, that we don't know about it is because it would cost a lot of rich people a lot of money. The status quo loves to maintain its hold and grip on power. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we are using the best technologies. A lot of times great innovations in technology are shelved or sidelined, or just destroyed completely, because they would take away too much from those people who are running our country and these big businesses. So I think we always need to be skeptical, and I would love to learn more about this, Jeff. It sounds absolutely fascinating.
Jeff, tell us again. I'm going to write this down here, and so interesting to me, and I'm sure many listeners. How do you describe that radio transmitting platform? Tell us again.
What happens is you place your tube, obviously, radio and transmitters and receivers in a deep mine somewhere. Okay. And then what you do is you run the antennas out of two antenna systems out of phase with each other, so they make the other stuff. Because interferometry is one of the ways you make the other stuff. And this is not using regular electromagnetic energy in the way you think of it, but that's another issue. The thing is that basically what that does is it flies through the earth. And in World War II, when ham radio was banned, a lot of ham radio guys just put wires in the ground and transmitted to each other short range.
And what's the name of the radio? I wanted to write the actual name.
Rogers. Rogers radio system. The Rogers radio system was a World War I. It was America's greatest secret in World War I. Okay? And the thing is that what they were doing was they were transmitting into Baltimore, Maryland from Europe. All right? Now, I heard about this when I was a kid. And the thing is that from ham radio guys, old guys when I was a kid, we're all silent keys now. But of course, the thing is that that's the only way that you really have a secure network, is to have something where you're putting stuff not over the air, but through the earth.
Very interesting. Wow. I'm going to do my own research on this, and everybody out there, we're getting a very good education here from Jeff.
It absolutely works. It absolutely works, because I go out and I test some of the equipment every few months, and I guarantee you it works. And this is all a bunch of patriotic organizations that more or less grew out of the old Minutemen situation. But the thing is that, as I say, and how much great research and how much great patents are basically held from us under the Official Secrets Act.
That's a true thing. I want to remind the audience, and I don't think I have to remind too much, because this date, 84 years ago, on December 7th, the vicious attack by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor, some 30,600 days ago. I mean, you can do the math yourself. But again, our solemn remembrance to those that lost their lives in that very, very sad day. We had a friend of ours here in Arizona who was one of the last survivors of the Pearl Harbor attack, And he sadly passed away, as we say. He moved on to the infinite. But he, of course, a good Texan, and he told me stories about he pulled his Springfield rifle as we were being shot at by those Japanese Zeros and torpedoed. He was sitting there by a bunch of sandbags, and he was shooting back with his .30-06 Springfield A303 rifle. And to this day, let us never forget what happened on December 7th, 1941. Thank you, Jeff, in Brooklyn Heights. Very interesting conversation. Wow, Chris, imagine, look, all these different callers. It's incredible. We appreciate that. That's a subject I had no idea about because I was wondering how you can get the transmissions through the rock density of the Earth, but I'm going to look at it, again, called what? Rogers Radio System. You know, we're almost up against that break, and I want to have you have an open opportunity here to talk about some of the other things that are of interest to you in the whole world of what's happening there with cyber attacks and all these various subjects. And I know, closer to home to our New York audience, wasn't there something that happened where the entire grid of cellular was attacked during the time of the big UN conference that happened in September? Just allude a little bit on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was basically a denial of service attack, which we know from websites when thousands of computers are basically trained to just ping one site and bring it down, essentially. There were a group, a well-organized and well-funded group in New York right around the time President Trump and other world leaders were meeting at the UN. And this is just going back just a few months, but they managed to get a hold of over 100 SIM servers and over 100,000 SIM cards, which, had they been successful in setting this up and activating it, could have potentially taken down the entire state of, not the entire state, but a huge part of New Jersey and Manhattan, especially around the UN towers, by flooding those networks and control planes with millions of texts per minute. And this is something that this technology has been out there for a while, but being used in this way, especially right around the time of such importance in the UN, is a wake-up call to us, because if such an attack were coordinated throughout the country, it could very easily bring down the entire cell phone network, I think.
Any idea who the perpetrators were, or is there any evidence that we have anybody in custody, or still nothing?
I mean, the Secret Service led this investigation, did a great job scooping these guys up, but I don't think we know officially, and we may never know who it was. But I got a few guesses, because this kind of attack would take an awful lot of money and an awful lot of connections. You can't just walk into a T-Mobile store and pick up 10,000 or 100,000 SIM cards. You need to have a connection, high up there in the company. You need to have a lot of money behind you to do that. So it was a sophisticated attack that was well funded.
Amazing. That's incredible. Yeah, that's an amazing story, Chris, as we go to this break and we continue, ladies and gentlemen, to the top of hour number 2. Future suggestions on guests, we're always open to that, and we certainly provide ourselves. You tell us, ladies and gentlemen, that we do have these amazing guests like Chris and others. My email is drsky, Dr. Sky at wabcradio.com. More on the other side of this break as we continue with Theater of the Mind, the Dr. Sky experience, attempting and hopefully succeeding, opening our minds on so many mysteries out there that we probably don't hear about during our busy daytime lives, which are governed by the sun. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
47 minutes after the hour, we continue with Chris Orr, the official spokesperson for Sat123.com. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, you, our callers, we appreciate you greatly. Let's go to the north of the United States, to the great city of Montreal, Canada, as we welcome Robert to the Dr. Sky Experience.
Yes,
good morning, Robert.
Thank you for taking my call. You're really good, Dr. Sky. I appreciate listening to you. Very clever and to the point. The reason I'm calling is I just want to point out that here in Quebec, we are known for our hydroelectric generation, and we do have two major projects, one at James Bay and one at the Labrador-Quebec border. Now, the one at Labrador-Quebec is being expanded, and there's another project that's going into development phase as we speak, and we do export our excess electricity to New England, and people in New York certainly benefit from that. And I think that given the... Hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I think that in the trade talks between Canada and the United States, I'm sure that the hydroelectric issue is going to come up, and to the advantage of Canada, because this is green energy, and we're not burning fossil fuels to generate the electricity. And we have massive amounts of potential of electricity, and of course this is going to be very important to the development of our mutual economies. So
that's fascinating, Robert. You bring up the points you bring up, Chris. This is an excellent conversation point, and in your response to Robert in Montreal, Canada.
Well, yeah. Look, I think the best way that we can prepare for the future is to be diversified. You know, it's like we're talking about these data centers and these internet service providers. If you're just relying on one or two, you're going to be in trouble. But whether it's from water powered. Whether it's from hydroelectric generation, or it's from oil, or it's from gas, or it's from solar, I think we need to have a comprehensive, redundant system for supplying this energy, because we need so much of it so soon. And so the more the better, and the more diversified, I think the safer we are as a nation.
Robert, your response back, and you have the floor. You go ahead, please.
Yes, well, I think that he's correct in that, and I'm sure that our contribution to the North American economy, based on our energy potential, is quite significant. And I hope that the President Trump takes this into consideration in his deliberations with our government here in Canada.
Well said, and I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for the kind comments, and a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family in the beautiful city, one of my favorite, Montreal, Canada. Let's say good morning to Maureen. She's been patient. She's in Connecticut. Maureen, you're live on the air. How are you this morning?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. I just tuned in. I was about to go to bed, and I tuned in. Just as you were talking about the solar flare. Two comments. Number one, years ago, we had this thing called crop circles emerging.
Correct.
And so I don't know when this whole thing started, but 10, 20 years ago. And I kept telling my friends, I said, listen, the way they describe what's happening on the ground, I said, these crop circles are very possibly made through radio transmissions coming in through the earth. And they go, oh, no, that's impossible. That could never happen. And I said, yes, I think it does. I think, and the question is, where are they coming in from? I've never gotten a globe to see where the originating energy would be directed from. So that's a project for me. But I keep thinking the way it emerges in the crop circles, and it creates, they have all kinds of electrical phenomena.
That's a good connection, Maureen. Yeah, you brought up something good. You know, the best movie, you've probably seen it, but if people haven't, that I've ever seen about a crop circle situation, I think Chris would agree, is Mel Gibson in M. Night Shyamalan's movie, The Signs, which I thought was fascinating. Had you seen that one, Maureen?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
it's
that's
called
an interesting
The Signs.
One. Just Signs. Look it up. M. Night Shyamalan. It's a great movie, and I won't spoil it for anybody. But, Chris, have you seen this one also? That's amazing. It talks about crop circles, but it has the extraterrestrial connection. Chris, what say you?
Yeah. Yes, I have. And it was a while ago. But, look, I think Maureen could be onto something. If you think about the advances we've made in technology just in the last 10 years, imagine what's going to happen in the next 10 years, in the next 100 years. And if there is another civilization out there that's been, where we were, they were where we are now 1,000 years ago, imagine what they could do. And I don't think it's a stretch at all to think that, radio waves from outer space or deep space could be targeted to Earth, if they had that technology and create whatever science they wanted. So I don't discount that at all.
That's amazing. Maureen, that's interesting what you're talking about, something generated from the interior of the earth. So you may be setting up these crop circles, but nobody, I'm not the scholar on this, nobody has any conclusive answer on this. They always kind of tend to lead toward the extraterrestrial side, that this is, crop circles are generated by other than humans, and where did that come from? Your final
they're always
comment.
talking about the electrical. They're always talking about the electrical phenomena that goes on. Oh, my watch stopped, or the camera stopped working. So there's a high level of energy being directed into that space. The other, really quickly, the other thing, the gentleman who just came on from Canada,
Robert.
There has been a project that's been set forth in the Congress, but they've ignored it and they refuse to vote on it. Is called NWAMPTHA, and it's a project that the now they're calling themselves the Promethean Group, but it was directed from the group of Lyndon LaRouche scientists, and they were saying that there's this incredible thing to do that comes to bring power plants from Canada, from Alaska, from Canada, to bring water down into the Northwest, down through the middle of the country for crops, and then the tremendous amount of jobs that would be created for building the power stations, and then the farming that would be we would benefit from the farming area, because our aquifers in California and Arizona have been depleted, and somebody bought up the rights. Well, there's a wealthy woman in California who was given by the governor the rights to the water in California.
Well, that's a whole other subject, Maureen. I hate to cut you short, but I just want to remind everybody, you may know this, the Schumann frequency, or the resonance of the Earth, that natural frequency is 7.83 hertz, not kilohertz, but hertz. It may be one of the causations for what you're describing in the crop circle area. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family, and thank you for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. We close out with Jimmy in Brooklyn. If you're with us, you are on the air. We only have a few moments, but please continue. Thanks for being part of the show.
Yes, sir. Listen, you're talking about using the Earth as a conduit. Tesla, back in the 1880s, the great inventor Tesla wanted to use the Earth as a conduit to transmit power. And he's the guy that came up with the idea of the three-phase motor. Tesla was the king of that. That idea was back in the 1880s.
Jimmy, I appreciate the commentary. This is interesting. Chris, we close out with you again, sat123.com. You got the floor here. We got about a minute and a half, and you're a pro, so take advantage of that floor. There you go.
Well, again, thanks so much for having me on, Doctor, for having me back, rather. It's been fascinating, and it's great. I've learned so much from the show tonight and from your guests. But I would say this is what we've learned tonight, if nothing else, is that electricity is going to become maybe scarce and much more expensive, and we need to address that. But on a personal level, you can protect yourself with things like solar-powered portable generators that we have at sat123.com, where you can generate your own energy day in and day out. Because I hope the government gets it together, and I hope we improve our power grid, and I hope we have enough power for all these hungry AI data centers. But I'm not sure that we will. But what we can do is we can be prepared. We can be prepared with satellite communication, satellite phones, satellite internet, and our own generated solar electricity at home.
Alternatives.
Sat123.com. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you one quick final question. Of all the countries in the world that you've surveyed, which one do you believe has it most together in the subject that we're talking about today? Anyone come to mind? It's interesting.
I mean, that is a tough question. I think what I would say is that in the United States, there are the most people who are prepared to live off the grid. And in such a situation as we've been talking about, a mass outage of power and communications, people in this country, I'm from England originally, but I've never met so many people who understand the realities of the modern world we live in and are prepared in case something goes wrong. And of course, we hope and pray that those days don't come, but it's better to be prepared.
Chris, thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family. Let's do this again. And by the audience's participation, obviously, you rock and you knock it out of the park. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, we do a quick sky analysis for those of you that look toward the sky is the name of the show. You hear the opening act talking about always look to the skies. The moon continues to wane after its beautiful full superphase that happened on the 4th, that long night or cold supermoon. It's still in the sky. It's getting thinner and thinner. The moon will continue, ladies and gentlemen, to move very close during this morning. If you're looking out into the sky, you will see the moon and the planet Jupiter. That's the big bright object that's near the moon, some 400 million miles away. And then a big meteor shower peaking on the morning of the 14th, called the Geminid meteor shower. Special thanks to our helmsmen, Tony and Bill. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we do pass the torch of dialogue to TJ McCormick for the other side of midnight. And it's my obvious observation here, thanking you, ladies and gentlemen, being part of the Dr. Sky experience, for most Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a great 2026 as we move into a brand new year, hopefully providing you with satisfactory answers with great guests about these realms, the mysteries of the universe. Thank you. We'll see you next week. And again, always open your minds, ladies and gentlemen, to these great mysteries we try to provide you in the theater of the mind with those guests.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Looking for financial insights you can trust?
How do you protect yourself as an investor? What's the strategy?
I think it's really simple. I think you just want to be diversified in your portfolio.
The Payne family brings real-world experience to every conversation.
Well, I think that's the problem right now is, right, a lot of people that are close to retirement, they're taking so much risks. And if we do get a big sell-off, it could derail their retirement.
Listen to the Payne Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.